Despite being held hostage and tortured by Central African Republic rebels and soldiers, Philip Obaji has relentlessly investigated massacres, rape, and oppression by mercenaries from the Wagner Group and its successor, the Africa Corps. He's joining me now in studio. Now, Philip, you've been up close with some dangerous people. Tell us about it.
Oh yes, I have been working in the Central African Republic, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and in Niger. And what these countries have in common is the fact that they have welcomed paramilitaries from the Russian Wagner Group. So yes, I have been focusing on investigating what these paramilitaries have been doing in the last couple of years.
And what are some of the disturbing patterns that you have uncovered?
Well, massacres and rapes. And that happens a lot in the Central African Republic and also in Mali. Oftentimes the Russians are interested in what they can get off the gold mines and the diamond mines. So, but to get this, they have to fight rebels and militia groups, and that's why they commit massacres.
Have you seen any shift in tactics or behavior from when it was called the Wagner Group to now the Africa Corps?
Of course not. And it's just the same thing, only different name, but same tactics.
What are some of the personal risks you've faced yourself in uncovering some of these stories?
Yes, I have been targeted by Central African forces and also the Russian paramilitaries. I remember, some time ago, some of the local recruits to the Wagner Group told me, don't come to Bangui, because if you do so, we've been told to get you arrested or even killed.
Yeah.
Yes, and then recently, just a few months ago, I was arrested, held hostage, and then tortured by Central African forces acting on the orders of Russian paramilitaries on the border with Cameroon.
What, did they found you on the border with Cameroon?
Yes, they found me interviewing local artisanal miners who were crossing into Cameroon. They were fleeing conflict in the country and crossing into Cameroon.
How did you initially get interested in this story?
Well, in 2018, 3 of my friends, Russian journalists, had traveled to the Central African Republic to investigate the activities of the Wagner Group. Unfortunately, they were killed near Sibut in the central part of the country. And I told myself and told my editors at the time that I have to continue from where they stopped.
Yeah. And what message do you hope your reporting sends to the international community and the global leaders? And what are some of the things they should do to address some of these human rights abuses?
First, pay attention to what's happening in Central Africa and in West Africa. And then try as much as you can to support the media in these regions to combat Russian disinformation.
What have been some of the major challenges for you, aside from your personal security, in covering this story?
It's been able to get as many victims to speak out. There's fear, and there's also the fact that people are not even sure if they're even safe by doing so.
Yeah.
So,
what kind of language do they speak? Are you able to communicate freely with them?
well, they speak French, and some of them speak the local dialects. So oftentimes I have to go with interpreters.
Yeah.
So it's very challenging, but.
And how are you able to navigate through, it seems to me like a very difficult terrain.
Very difficult indeed, and that's why I oftentimes encounter rebels and some, other armed groups, because it's not an area that I'm very conversant with. So, but I try to be brave, and I'm lucky.
Are you in the U.S. right now to speak to Congress?
Yeah.
I believe. What are some of the things you're telling them, and what do you hope that they do?
Well, making them aware of the level of atrocities that the Russians have committed. And I want the Americans to talk more about what's going on in Africa, to pay more attention, and if possible, to support the media to combat the disinformation that Russia is spreading at a scale that no one has ever seen before. So, and then
why have they been effective? A little, as we end our conversation, why has Russia been very effective in these communities?
Because they're paying attention, they're spending money, even though not too much, and they're taking advantage of the difficulty that journalists have in getting better pay, the difficulties that they have in getting access to new places. So the Russians have come in and helping them with training,
equipment,
with exposure, and even with funding.
Yeah.
So, and this is working for the Russians,
Wow. Philip Obaji, thank you so much for taking time to come and chat with us.
The pleasure is mine, Jackson.
We hope you stay safe.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson.
That was award-winning investigative reporter Philip Obaji joining us here in studio. Thank you, Philip.
You're welcome.